my video. All right. Can you see it? I'm not sure if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, all, and welcome to ninth session we have on our workshop. Today, we have two very special guests with us, guest speakers, if I can call them. They don't need an introduction to any of us, but I will do the honors. We have Joshna Chinnappa with us, currently world number 11, has had a highest world ranking of 10, 11 PSA Tour title winner, current Asian champion, Asian Games medalist, Commonwealth Games gold medalist. Along with her, we have Harinder Pal Singh Sandhu, who's had a highest world ranking of 47. He also has won 11 PSA titles. He has won an Asian Games title, once the national champion, and a host series of other times he's represented India. So, with absolute confidence, I can say between Joshna and Harinder, they both know a lot of what we are going to discuss today, and I think they would give us an insight from a player's point of view towards tactics and strategy. So, Harinder and Joshna, please take it forward.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Cyrus. Okay, we're going to start now with tactics first. So, Harry, do you want to start the slide? All right, here goes. So tactics are the specific skills acquired by a player to assist him to successfully implement a plan in a match. So for me, this would be having what your skills are to come forward. So for example, like James Willstrop, his skill is to have a beautiful straight drop and attack his opponent with a straight drop. For example, the French players, they're able to use... They're able to use both their legs to play a shot. So they could either play from the forehand with their right leg and from the backhand with their left leg. So that is something that is a skill that the French use. So moving forward, Harry. All right, basic tactics. Hitting the ball to good length and hitting the ball hard. For me, this would be not just about hitting a ball. When I work with my coaches, it's about hitting really purposeful length, deep to the back, trying to cause a lot of mental pressure as well as physical pressure. Taking the pace off the ball. If you notice, a lot of the top players in the world, they do not play at the same pace for every shot. They are constantly mixing it up and they're constantly making the opponent guess where they're going to play. And the only way they can do that is by taking the pace off the ball and constantly creating that pressure for the opponent. Make no unforced errors. I feel like this tends to happen when we try to attack the opponent well before we are ready, or we're not confident, or we're trying to be too ambitious with our shots. So it's really important to keep in mind that when you're playing anyone, not to give away cheap points or free points. The next one is taking the ball early and on the full volley. When I try and practice my routines and my training, a lot of it has to do with standing really high up on the tee and trying to volley the ball as much as possible. And taking the ball early is such a huge advantage for you because it really puts so much pressure on your opponent to not really be able to react quick enough. And hence either forcing them to make the error or they're constantly on the outstretch or the full stretch trying to pick up your ball. So taking the ball early is a huge advantage for you. All right, the next one is controlling the tee. So if you look at, again, all the top 15, top 20 players in the world, you will see where they stand on the tee. And the better the player, the higher up they are on the tee, you know. And if you see they don't let anything get past them if they're in position to hit that ball. So controlling the tee is something that we constantly need to be working on, because the more you control the tee, the better you are in position to win points. Again, changing the pace is similar to taking the pace off the ball. I find that when I am just playing at one pace, I don't have much touch in the variation of like trying to play a straight drop or trying to volley the ball. So I find when I change the pace, whether it's lifting the ball high up, it also gives me more time to come back to the tee and try and force the loose ball as well from my opponent. Delaying shots is a huge tactic that we all need to have in our weapons while playing a match. I find that it causes a lot of frustration to opponents when you stop them for that split second and then play the shot, because a lot of players are very rhythmic players. So they like one type of movement. They like to just constantly be moving. So when I've played someone like Nicole David, who's a very steady, solid player, I found that every time I held her movement for that quick second, it caused a lot of pressure on her. And invariably, with many opponents, I got a lot of loose balls, and I was able to put that away. So delaying the shot does not necessarily mean that you're going to attack them. It can also mean that you just simply bring it back, or you just put the straight drop in forward. But it's about holding their movement. Recovery time. So this is another really important tactic in between a rally. We're under pressure a lot during rallies, and recovery time is, again, it goes back to lifting the ball, giving yourself time to reset within the rally, because we're under so much pressure sometimes that lifting the ball high up really gives you time to recover. It gives you time to come back to the tee. If you look at all the top players in the world, they all just throw the lob in, especially when they're on the move, or when they're on the outreach. They don't try to counter attack aggressively. They just throw the ball in the air, and it gives them time to come back and reset within the point. All right. Playing the ball away from your opponent. I find that many times, when I'm playing, I don't use the full four corners enough, and sometimes the opponent can predict what you're going to play, and they kind of just step in and take the ball early, and then it puts you under pressure. So I think it's very important to drag your opponent to all four corners, so that you're moving them away from the tee constantly, and you are forcing them to defend your shots as opposed to attack your shots. Using the three dimensions, this would be, again, using all heights of the wall, whether it's using the high up, the mid part of the court, or attacking a hard length down the wall. So I think it's important all the time to constantly use these three. In fact, even when I'm training with the top players, like, nobody hits a drive at the same pace. Like, we're always trying to see how close we can get it to the wall at the same time, using the different heights of the front wall. The next one is play the match at your pace. All right. So when we're playing different opponents, or when I'm playing different opponents, some of them are very aggressive, where they hit the ball really hard, and that's just their game. For example, like Nouran Gohar, like, she plays at one pace and she can smack the ball all day long. Now, if I were to play at her pace, I may last for 3 points, but it's not actually my game. So invariably, I'm going to lose out on the match to her, because I'm playing to her strength. And at the same time, when I play someone like Annie Au, she's someone who plays a very softer, very accurate drops, a lot of lobs, a very slow pace. So I found that when I would get sucked into an Annie Au's game, again, I was losing points and I didn't have my own rhythm. So I think it's very important to be aware of who you're playing and what type of game they are going to, bring to you. And at the same time, you've got to play how you play, like what your strengths are. Like, I'm someone who likes to be aggressive, but at the same time, I also like to mix up the pace a little bit. And I found that when I play to my strength, that I have had the most success with that. All right, Harry, on to you.
Hello, everyone. Now we move on to the second aspect, which is strategy. So, strategy in squash is an overall plan devised to assist a player to perform to his or her best potential in a match. So, this means how we prepare a game plan and how we tell our players to this is how you should be playing in the first half of the game, second half of the game, and towards the end, and so on. And the closer two players are in ability, skill, and fitness, the more strategy is going to determine who will win. So, this is the reason why, a lot of players who are similar in the skill level, fitness level, that's why they end up playing a lot of five setters, which sometimes go on to even 2 hours, close to 2 hours. And so, in this kind of situations, there's a lot of planning which needs to be done, and to pick out certain movement patterns that another player might not be feeling on that particular day. And this is the reason it takes a lot of time, and this is the reason basically why a lot of five setters happen. And what is a good strategy? Good strategy is when a player uses his or her strengths against an opponent's weakness. So, this when making a plan, you should be knowing what your opponent weaknesses are. Not rather than just saying that okay, you just go and play. So this mainly doesn't work, and this is the reason why a lot of upsets happen when a lot of top players, they go in and based on their rankings or their experience, they just say, okay, I'll just show up and I'll win because I'm a higher seed than the other player. Whereas on the other hand, the underdog does a lot of homework, does a lot of makes a lot of make a good strategy, and creates the upset. And when playing an opponent who is slightly better than you, the first thing you must do is admit it and then work out how to bring his or her playing standards down and beat him. So first thing you should do is respect the top seed, respect the high seed. There's a reason why he or she is number one, and you should understand his or her strengths, and you should also at the same time understand your strengths as well. You should not change your entire game based on an opponent's strengths, because if you do that, you will go away from your strengths, and this is you will go away. Yeah, so you will go away from your strengths, and yeah, there is a big difference in the ability of two players. The better player will just win on skill. Yes, so if there's a big difference, you see a lot of top players, a lot of top 10 players on PSA when they play anyone outside top 50. They usually, win their matches in the first round or second round very easily in 20 to 25 minutes, because there's a big gap in their skill level, and they want to conserve their energy as well to last longer in the quarterfinals, semis, and finals. And what are the aspects of strategy? Before working out the strategy for a match, the coach must look at four different aspects. Any game plan works on these four aspects, which is the player, which is your own player, and the opponent, the court conditions, and the climate conditions. So what do you look at your player is you must know your player's technical skill, fitness level, tactical skills, mental strength, and social habits. So what we mean by technical skill is how is your player swing? How is he or she feeling on that particular day hitting the ball? Is he or she able to hit hard, slow? Whether she will be able to change the pace when required? Will she be able to put the pressure on with her physicality or his physicality when needed? And fitness level, whether the previous round matches have been easy or tough. If it's been easy, then your player should be feeling at the top of their fitness level. If not, then you should then your strategy should be somewhat yeah, so your strategy should be based around the fitness level as well. And tactical skills, whether your player will, like I said, technical and tactical is somewhat mingle around against each other. And mental strength, how is your player feeling mentally, whether they are up for the challenge, whether they're feeling fresh, whether they're not feeling a lot of mental stress. Are they in a happy mood, sad mood, whether they're angry. You should be aware of all these of all the mental aspects of your player, and maybe you can change their mood You can lighten them up, maybe share a joke with them, which helps them relax a lot. And social habits. What are their social habits, and what do they like to do, the night before the match? Whether they are disciplined, whether they are going, spending late nights out, chatting with their friends, or having late night dinners. So those a coach must change before any important match, or on a regular basis. Because your social habits is what will help in the recovery of your players. And the opponent, find out as much as you can about your next opponent or possible future opponents before the match or matches. If possible, go and watch them play and analyze their games. See what their present form is like. So, when I'm going for my tournament, the draws come out way well before. So go online, look for the recent matches and the previous matches of my opponent, and I look at both features. I compare the matches that my player has won easily, and the matches that my player has won, going all the way to the five setters, and the matches that my player has lost at the same time. What did the other player do to beat him? So I compare both. Make notes and plan my strategy according to my experience as well, of not just by watching them online, and even watching them play in front of me, where I have been sitting on the back wall, and feel watching my opponent very carefully. So it's a mixture of both, using my experience and using the the matches online as well. And next is knowing all this, weigh up all the strengths and weaknesses of both players, and start planning your player strategy. Yeah, so this is what I covered in the first point as well. And the next is court conditions. Yeah, instead of complaining about court conditions, remember the court is the same for both players, and use it as best you can to your advantage. We often complain about the floor is a little bit slippery. When it's sweating, whether because it's so humid, the floor sometimes gets slippery. You should also remember that the court is the same for both players. You should learn to use it to your advantage rather than complaining all the time, and with your with your just one second. Yes. Yeah. So you should remember that the court is same for both the players, and you should learn how to use it at your own advantage. If the court is slippery, you should be very careful in moving it. At the same time, make the court bigger and longer for the opponent, so that if it's slippery, you should make him or her lose their mind, and divert them to that condition. And lighting, weather is, sometimes we play, let's ask Joshna, because she's played in two different countries of the world, whereas she's played in Elguna, where the courts are very humid, it's very hot, the climate is very hot, and the court, sometimes the ball is very bouncy on the court. Joshna?
Yeah, thanks, Harry.
Yes.
So, yeah, like Harry said, there have been so many conditions that I've had to play in, whether it's, starting out with the wooden courts for the first two rounds, and then straight away going outside to play, and, sometimes you're playing late at night at like 10 at night. If you're in a country that's really cold, it can be freezing, or a country like Elguna, where it's like kind of humid, but it's also super windy. I find that it's best not to overthink the dimensions of the court, because it's actually all the courts are the same dimension, and it's important to try and just focus on your game plan, focus on getting really good length, because if your length is good, then the confidence immediately comes to you. And just keeping a couple of things in mind, again, like I said, hitting good length, getting back to the tee, watching your opponent even more closely, so that you know where they're going to hit, and that'll give you that advantage to get to the ball sooner. And yeah, and just really fighting for every point like you would on any court.
Yeah. Thanks for the insight, Josh.
Sure.
And the next, now we move on to the second part of today's webinar, which is tactical progressions using traffic lights and corner court system. So basically, what is it? What is a tactical progression? It is a process of structured practice designed to support the game-based learning and focuses the player on the intention to create a tactical advantage. So what it is a structured practice and game-based learning, which means structuring your training patterns uh, similar to the patterns of how you will play in a match, or which is very random patterns of movement, which are not, okay, which are not very set patterns how you would do in a drop drive or a post drive. For example, we in the past, we used to spend like a lot of time doing just drop drive in the same pattern, not moving much, and with the set pattern of shots, and even post drive with the person in the front is just driving and the person in the back only boasting. So to change that into a game-based learning, which means you can give the player in the front option of a straight drive or a cross court, and the person at the back can hit a boast, a straight drop, and a straight drive. So which will force the person in the front to come back to the tee, and also the person at the back, if the boy if someone's drive is loose, the person or cross court is loose, the back person can go in the front and volley their straight drive, volley their cross court, and put the pressure on them, and the person, they keep changing the sides. It's not a set pattern, it's very random, and it's a game based learning as well. So why you do that? It enhances the anticipation, perception, decision process, providing the player with additional time. So that's why I said, let the person at the back or in the front choose when they want to hit a straight, when they want to hit a cross, or when the back person wants to, go right ahead on the center and volley the straight across. And this is when anticipation, perception, decision. So anticipation is when you hit a good post, the person is under pressure. Most likely the person is going to hit a loose drive or a cross. That is the time when you see and make a decision when you want to go, how further up on the tee you want to go, and volley there straight across, put the pressure on them and bring them back to back, and then you go in front of them and keep changing your roles, keep going in the attacking position and defend and attack again. And yes, and when it needs to become an integral part of the learning process of coaching practice games on a regular basis to ensure learning is taking place for a match situation. So what this does is, even in your normal training situations, your players are training based on match situations, not that just going and turning up and just doing drop drive or post drive, or just drives where the players are not going to the center and they're just hanging back they're hanging back closer to the back wall, which does no good to them. And this is the reason why a lot of European players and Egyptians, they're always way ahead on the tee compared to the Asians and even us. When I went on the PSA tour, I felt myself hanging close to the service box line rather than going close on the tee. And yeah, so this is what you should be doing on your regular basis. And how you do that? By creating a progressive structure of games that enhances the learning process. It works by dividing the front wall into specific heights for the player to focus on overall accuracy. Yes, structure. Or any games that they play in practice, they have to be structured. It should not be, they're just playing an overall game. You should divide them. Okay, today the player A can play only in these particular lines or only in these particular heights on the front wall, where the player B, can play an overall game. So it's a balance of both, where both players are learning to play freely and at the same time learning to play under pressure when they are feeling the player is higher than them and putting them under pressure and when they have to defend. Yes, it was for traffic lights. What are traffic lights? These are the red zone, yellow zone, and green zone. So red zone is the zone which is very high on the front wall, which is more height and depth and more time to recover to the T zone. So this is the zone that Joshna just mentioned before. Having a lot of time to recover, throwing a lot of lobs when under pressure, throwing a lot of lobs from the center when the player is putting you under a lot of pressure in the front corners, in side to side. You don't want to smack the ball, you don't want to hit the ball hard so that you do not have enough time to come back to the center. And so this is the zone that you use to change defense into attack. A lot of players use the high lobs to put the opponent back to the back wall, and sometimes that's how you force them to hit a back wall. That's how change the pattern of defense into attack. So the yellow zone is less height and depth than red, but more power, less time and more pressure on the opponent. So this is the zone which is in the middle of the front wall, where we hit most of the time. when we hit most of the time to get a good length or get a good cross, when you're hitting from behind, hitting the perfect length, this is the zone that you use. Uh, yes, and the green zone is less height and depth than yellow, but more power. So which means when you hit your straight kills, your cross court kills, and your cross court nicks, so this is a zone that we all use. And when you hit there, this gives less time and additional pressure on the opponent. So green zone would also include shots like drop and straight kills. Yes, so this is the zone that all the players emphasize on hitting. This is what we practice every day, from the center when I, any player, they spend hours and hours of hitting drops, hitting straight kills, hitting cross court nicks. And this is the zone that we all focus on. And when hitting to a good length, one of the main objectives of each zone is where the second bounce takes place. Sure. This is very on a bouncer court. We do not on a very humid conditions, like she said. In Elguna when she plays outside, when it's very humid, the ball is very bouncy. The green zone comes a little higher and mixes up with the yellow zone comes little lower and mixes with the top part of the green zone. So this is where a lot of players hit low and hard drives which shoot off from the front wall, and at the same time they die on the back wall. But on a warmer court, if you use the green or if you use the yellow zone, that's where you see the balls bouncing off from the back wall when you hit your crosses going very wide and coming to the center line. Your drives when they bounce, they come off the back wall and almost come to the service box. So this you need to be very careful in which court, which climate conditions you are playing on, and choose your zones accordingly, choose your traffic lights accordingly. And so this is the perfect table to show you all. So the red zone is the recovery attacking zone. The recovery is when obviously when someone is putting pressure on you by hitting in the green zone, you lift. We always lift. So what I do is when someone is killing, I use my movement and speed, to just lift because I know I can reach them. At the same time, I want to convert my defense into attack. You can lift straight, you can lift cross, and sometimes what we do is if someone, yeah, and the yellow is recovery attacking zone, and which is where we hit the medium pace straight drives, the medium pace crosses from behind when you're feeling a little bit under pressure, and so you bring the opponent back. And the yellow zone mostly bounces, the yellow light mostly bounces just behind the service box and hits the back wall. And if you want to get it lower, you hit on the green zone, which bounces just on the service box line, and the ball dies on the back wall or just before the back wall. So these a player, it's a must for any player to know these traffic lights, these areas on the front wall. Uh, like for me, these areas are always fixed in my mind. Wherever I am, my movement, my recovery time to the center is based on where my shots have hit on the front wall. If, for example, if someone has hit a drive and they have pushed me into the back wall, and my next shot is a lob, which is I hit a straight lob and it has hit the red line. So for me, I know I do not have to rush because I have time. All I have to think about is a lot of control on my retrieving shot, and just make sure to hit the height, keep it height on the front wall, and that will enable me to come to the center nice and easy. And at the same time, when someone is putting pressure on me, when I know okay my drive or a cross court has not hit my desired zones, so that's the time when I rush very when I hit and just rush to the center. My eyes are on my opponent and on the ball where my ball has landed up. So based on that, you move. I set my movement patterns. Yeah. And next is the corner court system. What is the corner court system? So this is, by breaking up the floor into corner sections, we can set the player clear targets to help the development of linking action to result. So targets on the floor also helps us teach angles and weight of shots. This we generally is a perfect example when we play a three-quarter court. We have divided the court into, for example, we play forehand side and the back and front corner. So this is a perfect example of breaking the court into the corner sections. And why we do that? Uh, when trying to throw something with precision, we need to set clear targets. Yes, when you break down the court, you should know, okay, if I'm hitting a volley draw from the center when a player is behind, my shot needs to hit the green zone, and that shot needs to end in that particular corner section. If not, then I'm under pressure. Then my shot is loose. Then I need to be on my toes to retrieve the next shot of my opponent. And this would also help with accuracy and allow for instant feedback and adjustment. Like like I just mentioned, if my volley has gone in the green zone and if it is in the same corner, then I am very relaxed. I go one more step further to to anticipate a straight dive or cross drive. Then I move the opponent from this corner back to the backhand corner. And if my drop hits the yellow zone, then I know, okay, I'm in trouble. I need to, be more attentive, be on my toes, be prepared to, either pick up that counter drop or, pick up a cross court kill and so on. And this helps in, accuracy and obviously your feedback and adjustments. And when the principle of hitting a ball with a clear target aim should be done for every shot. This is where, yeah, a lot of players, for example, James Willstrop, that's the reason why he's called the marksman, because, this is what he does. His every shot is a principle of hitting the ball with a clear target and aim. That's what he does in every shot. That's why his drops are so good. That's why he's the best player when he plays his alley game. And I remember one match that he played with Rami Ashore. I think it was somewhere in North America. I'm not exactly sure where he beat him, where he beat Rami by just playing an alley game. He didn't play anything else, nothing else, just straight. He just kept the ball straight, closer to the wall, and obviously he used the traffic lights on the front wall, to give variation to his game, and he just beat him 3-love, and which was very good to see. And how you do that? Using the short lines as the middle line and the half court line to run up through the middle. We break the court into 4 corners. So the next table will show you how it's done. Yeah, so this is the corner court system, and this is C1 and C2, C3 and C4. So in this, C1 is your backhand front corner, and C2 is your forehand front corner, C3 is your forehand back corner, and C4 is your backhand back corner. So this gives a very good, a very good view of how to divide your court systems. Yes. So, just as coaches, the questions when you plan your training sessions, when you give a certain targets to your players to achieve or certain gaming patterns for them to try and practice before they do it in a match. This is what you should be very clear about is what do I want my player to do? This is very important because if you do not understand what your player to do, how will your player understand what he needs to do? This is a reason, a lot of players say, a lot of I've also experienced is that when they say तू क्या कर रहा है तुझे क्या बोला है करने के लिए तू क्या कर रहा है और तू कहाँ मार रहा है यह नहीं मारना है but the player sometimes is so scared to ask कि कहाँ मार रहा है मुझे आपने बोला ड्राइव मार रहा है but ड्राइव वहां से नहीं आ रही है मैं जोर से ही मार रहा हूँ जोर से ही मार रहा हूँ और बॉल इतनी बाउंस कर रही है कि sometimes a coach is not very clear with the instructions like what does he or she wants their player to do. So you should also tell them that why do I want them to do. The drive has to hit on the yellow light so that it hits just so that the ball just comes to the back wall and not bounces off from the back wall. And when they should do it is obviously when they are under pressure or when they are in front of them, whether they need to hit the green zone. If they are under pressure, change the defense into attack by lifting up the lobs from the front wall, hit the red zone, and when they're in front, use the green zone very well. And how do you produce it, and what are the targets? And obviously, this we discussed earlier. The targets are your corner core system and the traffic lights. And what are the benefits, negatives of hitting each zone? Each zone. So obviously, the benefits and negatives is if you hit a green zone from behind, so which is unnecessary when the player is in front of you. Obviously, the player is going to change that into his advantage and counter drop or a flick or a trickle boost. So this is the negative part, and the benefit is when you under pressure, when you lift, hit the green zone, and from the center you hit the from the front when you lift and hit the red zone, and when you are in the center and you hit the green zone. So these are the advantages, and it is very clear in the player's mind as well that when I'm in the front, I need to hit the green zone, and if I do not hit the green zone when I'm in front, I'm in trouble. So this activates the player's thinking, activates the player's muscles that okay, I'm now in trouble, I need to move fast. Now I've hit the green zone, I can relax or move forward and cut the next shot. And obviously, what are they trying to achieve? Whether they're trying to achieve accuracy, whether they're trying to achieve attack, uh, achieve a lot of attacking game in their tactical game, whether if they are not used to, and so on. And external and the questions to ask that could help the process, but not limited to, which is external questions, which is you see from a coach's point of view is what does it look like when you force and allow your opponent to hit a certain zone. You just see when your player forces your opponent to hit a certain shot when the shot, and what does it look like, for example, and what does it look like, does it help their anticipation and deception, and what influences the shot the player will hit, and where the player will choose to have any point of impact, and when and why do we play a certain shot, and when and how do we add deception. So there's these come later on when the player has mastered their tactical skills, the basic playing patterns, these deception and certain shot, for example, cross court nicks and all those certain shots, fancy shots, they come in later on in a player's development. And these are certain examples of tactical progressions, where the first one is a whole court game at a match speed to 5 points, using a coach's eye. What do the coaches see, and what is our area of focus, and do we need to get our players to buy in and either dial up by their intensity or focus? What will be our intention? And the second one is above or behind. Using this is a lot of players, even we in our training sessions, we play this a lot of time. Whereas we use the service line and the uh, uh, short line as a targets to link action to result. When we play above or behind, which is if you hit above or based on at match speed, based on our open assessment, if any prior knowledge of the players, we can start to explore what our intention will be. And when we play above, for example, when we play a backcourt game, we have already use the target as the short line, as a target that every ball should bounce behind the short line, and if you're in front, you can volley and hit the green zone, and so on. You can keep adding shots on the volley or from the behind. You can hit a one kill or you can add kills, but at the same time you're focusing on playing the backcourt. And these then we go on. These are certain more tactical progressions. For example, now these they have mentioned C3 court systems as well. So traffic lights into C3. When you are behind your opponent, you must take a shot into court one. When you are in front of your opponent, yeah. So these say when you play, for example, a backcourt game, when a certain player has it from a from the behind, when a person has to lose drives, you put the pressure on into C1 or any C3, or when some of your player has hit a cross court, you go and play into C2 or C3. These work around in those areas. And in the end, the skill of the coach is to make sure the intention has not been lost in the lifting of the constraints. So this what means is, if your intention is if a player's intention is just to volley, and that's what you have made the made the game, so that a player is not doesn't volley enough, and the condition is revolving around the player to volley. So you should make sure that when you introduce a lot of shots, a player doesn't leave the volley, because that's the reason you introduce that drill for. So yes, this is practical. This Yes. Yes. So in the end, after all, you make all the strategy and all the tactical progressions. So in the end, we should all look like that. Did we work with the four guiding principles? And those are: did we work on? Did we train today based on how we play games, which is game based? Was it game based, or was it just standing and moving around and hitting casually? And did you coach the intention, which is did you coach the players' intention so that not just the result? Was the player trying to volley more, or was the player trying to drop more, and was the player trying to move up on the center, up on the tee? And these are the certain things that you should just keep in mind. And subconscious learning, when the player has learned something, and which is next is encouraging the individual to explore and find the options they create. And the four to yes. So yeah, that'll be all. And these are mostly a lot of practical stuff when you go on court, and these are very easy to explain then. So yes, if you have any questions, please send them through, and we'll try to answer. Sarisa?
I think that was fabulous, Harinder and Joshna. I think that was very well explained, and I think it's given us an idea of what we actually need to think of while we are getting on court and doing it. Uh, already one question has come out, which is very good. But either for all to of y'all to answer this question, or both of y'all. Generally, when you get into a match, and this is what especially all us coaches are dealing a lot with our juniors. What are the key things do you think that we would need to tell the juniors to get on? Not many times we don't. We have not played the opponent before as well. So if they are playing an international event, so what would you tell the juniors generally to do? What are the key tactics you feel our Indian juniors should improve when we go for international tournaments? And I'd like both Harinder and Joshna to just answer this, and then we take other questions.
Harry, you go.
Yes, what I feel is, when our junior players travel for tournaments, I think they play and rely on how they play back at home. Whereas, we play a lot in a lot of hot conditions, a lot of humid conditions, and when they travel to Europe, for example, British Open, where the courts are very cold, they kind of get a habit of playing just smacking the ball and not moving the ball, and not using the traffic lights, like we discussed just now, and not stepping up on the tee. And this is where a lot of Egyptian and a lot of British players, they end up going ahead of them. And I would say, just yeah, just move the ball around, not just hack all the time. Play, use your own advantages, and yeah, yeah.
Okay, Joshna, anything extra from
I find that there are many times you're going to be playing players that you've not played before, and you've not had an opportunity to really watch them. So I think it's important to just keep a few things in mind. Again, like I said, it all goes back to focusing on hitting good length. Keep the rallies nice and long. Test the waters out a little bit, like see how they're going to attack you. Are they, what their favorite shot might be. It could be stepping in front and doing the straight volley drop. So I think the first few points are very important in just keeping the ball in play, keeping it deep, seeing how you're feeling as well. And then as you feel more comfortable and confident, then you need to decide when you have to attack the ball and when you got to keep it in play, and not trying to be too fancy with your shots. Just trying to play a basic simple game and creating opportunities for yourself.
Fabulous. Okay. The one point, if I just want to make before we get into the questions, is I believe our Indian juniors do not volley as much as they should. If you have to just ask me one thing, it's that we don't volley enough. And that's an area which I feel, as a tactic and strategy, is something that we need to work on and improve on that. So that's my point of view. And let's take the questions. Harry, do you see the questions? Do you want to read them out and answer?
Yes, sir. I'll see. Yes. Could you please explain 3 matches where you changed your game and strategy in between the game as per your before strategy, and changed strategy when, and change strategy, what are the patterns you added or modified, and which pattern didn't implement in that games? Joshna?
So for me, when I go in to play any opponent, I definitely discuss with my coach, what the plan is for this particular player. And a lot of players already, if you've known them in the top, they already have a style of play. You know that they're going to attack you from a particular area on court. So for me, I make sure when I make a plan with my coach about who I'm going to play, that we don't play the shot to where their strengths are. So if someone's got a great forehand volley, you try and avoid the mid-court area where they're going to forehand volley the drop. And there are many times that you can come in with a set plan and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to play and this is how I'm going to win. And then you find that your opponent is adapting to what you've come in with. And that's what makes you a really good squash player, where you're constantly changing your game plan based on what's happening on court. There are days that you're not going to be able to be 100%, and you've got to try and win a match by just being solid, getting to the tee early, volleying as much as you can. And I cannot tell you any specific match that I've played where I've had to change plans, but it's just constantly where you feel like you need to do a particular style with somebody, but at the same time, you if it's not working for you and you find that they are attacking you more than they should be, then you've got to change it up and either use more height while you're playing, or keep the ball deeper for longer instead of going short too quickly. So I find that for me, my change of plans usually happen with like changing certain shots in the game, like just being more consistent, playing a more straightforward, simple game of squash.
And one more recent example that I could share of changing the strategy was with Meghla ma'am and Dheeraj sir. And they're present here today was at SAF games when we made a plan against Farhan Mehboob in the semifinals. Whereas he likes to play a very attacking game, and me, I'm a very physical player. I like to play really long games and not attack much at certain times. And that was a time when I could not, when I myself had to go get out of my comfort zone and attack on every opportunity I got in the center or even in the front. I could not just rely on my fitness, and you could not rely on just by hitting back and not taking to the front. So that was a time every game our strategy was changing. Every part of the game in the starting, and if I had the lead, and in the middle if I lost the lead, our strategy was changing. And yes, so it depends on what, like you said, what opponent you're playing and so on.
Okay. There's just next question, very quick one. We can put it this way: is which player do you think has the best footwork?
I think in the men's footwork, who has the best footwork, I would say I haven't seen anyone else other than I think Tarek does a lot of footwork. If you see, he is, before he hits any shot, his footwork is ready. Whether he's going on any corner or in the back corners, his footwork is always ready. And someone who has fast feet would be Miguel, who and our own player Saurav. Since he's very low to the gravity, so for them to move really fast, sticking to the floor, it helps them a lot. And the taller you are, the more you have to move, the more muscles you have to move, the more bones you have to carry. So it depends. And so these are the players I think in the men's game, who have fast feet. And the women's, Joshna would.
I think for the women's, it would definitely be at the top. It would be Raneem Al Walili and Camille. If you look at them both play, they're very athletic. Their first step to the ball is super quick, and then they decelerate very well when they're going to play the shot. They pick up a lot of balls. They have very, very good athletic movement on court, and that's because they actually do a lot of ghosting. Like both those players do a lot of ghosting, and hence you're able to see that movement on court from them.
Yeah, and I feel that my movement is also very good, but I'll name other players. So
I agree with that. Another question is when you've got before you go on to a court, before your match, and you're playing someone who has got excellent skill, what strategy would you really use for that?
I think I'll give an example. Like there are a lot of senior nationals when I played Saurav. I know that he is better than me in skill, but then at the same time I do not. I use my physicality to empower him. To put him in certain situations where he's doing a lot of work, and if he makes me do a lot of work, I'm very happy in doing that, because that is my strength, and I do not go away from that. And yes.
So basically, if somebody's got a lot of skill, you need to ideally pin him to corners and keep the rallies very long. Now, don't give him the opportunities to go for his shots. So you would have to do that. Okay, then Joshna, you have always maintained and displayed your good performance at international level. How difficult is it for you to maintain it, especially when you play with the younger players?
It is quite hard because the younger girls are really coming out very aggressively. They're playing good squash from such a young age, especially girls from Egypt, Malaysia, all over from the US. And it is important that when I play someone like them, that I come in with the same plan, the same motivation, and same discipline, that how I would play a top 10 player in the world. I don't take any of them for granted. I know that they're also very fit, they're very skillful, so I just treat them like any other player I'm competing with on tour, and just try and make sure that I keep the ball in play for longer, and I use my skill to my advantage by putting them under pressure, because they've also not played as many matches as me on tour, and sometimes maybe they can crack before I can. So I try and take advantage of that.
Okay. Another question which has come in, and it's very relevant, especially for our juniors, because I see that happen too often, is how often should a player hit a boast? Harry,
So how often is you should hit a post as soon as you realize that your opponent has stepped back, has come back from the tee. As soon as you see that when you are at the back wall, immediately put in a post, and go forward to the tee and be ready to anticipate his or her straight drive or a cross court or even a counter drop. And a lot of time, Boast works very well in when you're playing in colder courts. And that's the time when you really move your opponent from the center to the any front corner. So, it just depends where your opponent is. You should not hit a Boast just for just to feel happy, because then that doesn't serve any purpose. So I think there should be a purpose based on your opponent and how good your Boast is. Like, I love playing the 3-wall Boast, and I do that only when I have the lead, or when I know that the ball is in the corner and the opponent is not expecting that. And there are a lot of players, when you put them in a lot of under pressure and you put them back deep in the corner, and they end up just playing Boast. That is the time you read that as well, and then you go and counter drop. So yes.
yeah, absolutely good. The point I'd like to emphasize is that don't hit a boast for the sake of just hitting a boast. It's got to be a tactical shot. Ideally, you should be in front of your opponent, or you got to be as good as Harry to get those 3-ball posts rolling into the nick every time. Okay, next one. What is the mental makeup, or what is the and strategies of different players while playing the most important matches? So, like the Commonwealth Games, how do you feel when you travel for the Asian Games, Commonwealth Games? Do you go in with any different mindset to another PSA event, or is it the same?
For me, I feel that it's definitely a bigger platform. It's a bigger stage. I think when you're playing for India, it's just a whole other level of feeling, and pressure and nerves and all of that. But at the same time, it's very exciting because as we go with the team, we go with the coach, with the physio, with the other players. So it's definitely very, very exciting. And yeah, I think it's important to try and, contain the excitement and try and look at it as another match on tour, and just come with the same plan that you would as you're competing with any other player on the tour.
Harry, anything new, anything different you would do when you're playing an Asian Games
So
tournament?
yeah, so for me, those two events, or anytime I put on an Indian T-shirt to play, I really play from my heart and not from my brain and not from my head. You can say easily, because for me, being there, I literally like goosebumps. My heart rate is, I think it goes beyond 200 every time I step onto the court. Be it practice, or be it the match day, or or just being there for my teammates. For me, that is a very big stage, and that is where the coaches come in, to give me a strategy, and not just run around and just beat the ball or break the balls, or just keep running. And yeah, so for me, it is a very big stage. Those are the moments I live for. And yeah, so for me, it's just very different. It's just not playing. Is just, yeah, just something special. It's very hard to describe. And yeah.
Excellent. Another good question, which goes into a particular instance. Harinder, you won the Willingdon PSA event in December, and you had just recovered from an injury. What was your strategy uh, at the time to play at your comfort zone? Okay, so what was your strategy? So in fact, I can like to put it, what's your strategy before, once you just finished, once you just got out of your injury? What was your mindset when you started playing? Then what did you eventually, did you do anything different at the tournament as well?
Uh, so uh, so while playing, I only had to put in a lot of emphasis on how I was feeling mentally rather than physically, because physically I had done a lot of training, a lot of hard work, a lot of rehab every single day for the last 1 year, before playing, before coming back. So for me, my body was okay, but I had to overcome my mind. I was thinking, yeah, okay, what if I bend? What if I bend a lot? And what if I twist and turn a lot? And what if I, hit a hard cross court where a lot of twisting is involved of your, of your trunk and of your lumbar spine, that nothing should crack again. So for me, was to just overcome those, and it took me, the Chennai PSA, the SAF games, and a lot of hard matches to overcome that. And once I did that, my game started falling in place. And for me at that time was just to, just to just to be very strong physically with my mind as well. If I'm feeling very strong with my body, and then I play really well. And if anything goes wrong with the body, then I'm not really there. So I was just telling my mind, nothing's happened, and you are completely fine. And at the end of the day, your body follows what your mind tells it to. So that was what I was keeping in mind.
Fabulous. Harry, I wish my body could follow my mind, but unfortunately not. Next question is for Joshna. I'd like Joshna to answer it. How important do you think it is for juniors to play tournaments abroad? And at what age do you think they should start traveling?
Definitely. I definitely think juniors should be playing a lot more tournaments abroad. The competition is really, really huge abroad. You have all the Egyptians coming in, the English players, the Malaysians. So it's important as a junior that you get exposed to all kinds of games, competing in different court conditions. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun as well to, compete with other players from different parts of the world. And at an age, I think for me, my first junior tournament was the Singapore under 13 that I went when I was 11 years old. So my first junior tournament was when I was 11 years old. And I think that's an appropriate age to start playing the juniors.
Okay, thank you. How do you use match fear in a positive way before and during a match? So this is more in the mental side. Do you use it when you get nervous? Is it to your benefit, or do you feel too nervous and then you don't play as well?
Harry?
So I think nervousness helps helps me to get become really alert, and all the fears that I have and all the nervousness that I have, I take it out in my warm up. And when I get on court, all the little bit fears that I have, I will not be able to hit, or I will not, my drops might not come, or my straight drive might not come, or I might not be able to volley enough. I take those out in my warm up. I hit the ball hard, to any negative energy that I have, I take it out of my body by sometimes smacking the ball really hard, and the opponent or the players sitting behind sometimes think that they get really shocked that why he is hitting the ball so hard. But you do not think about those things. It's all about how certain things that you do on court and off court would make you feel to play better. And yes, sir.
So you would say that before a match, would there be any key things? You're playing a very crucial match. Would you do any key special things every time? Is there any sort of mental strategy you do or something yourself before a tough match?
So sometimes if you're feeling a little maybe lethargic before your maybe finals, because your semi-finals are very long, you kind of go wash your face. Or sometimes when I'm not feeling really attentive, I kind of during games or in my warm up with just one hand, I will try to slap myself to maybe just wake up. And that helps your eyes automatically go big, rather than, because if you slap anyone, their eyes go big. So I just use those kind of stuff. So, or hit, or use your racket to hit your leg or hit your back or hit your chest, and yes, just normal stuff.
How important is mental training? Joshna, you want to give a quick answer to this?
Yeah, it's quite important for sure. I think as an athlete, it's so important to constantly make sure that your head is connected, with your body. It definitely helps you play a much better game on court. It helps you become a much better squash player as well. So yeah, it's important to do a lot of things with regard to training yourself mentally. It can be through yoga, it can be through meditation, visualization. Like, all these things are extremely important, because I feel that it's so easy to work on yourself physically. Everyone loves to work hard physically and go to the gym and do their runs, but we don't really work mentally as much as we should. And I think if we can do that more, where we're getting into good frames of mind and feeling very positive about our training, about our game, about our game plans, I think it can make a huge difference in your results, in your game. And I definitely think training mentally should be done every day.
Fabulous. I think that's been absolutely insightful. Both Harinder and Joshna, you all have been outstanding. We've had a great presentation, and I express on behalf of all the coaches over here a big thank you to you all, and hope you all are both taking care of yourselves and working hard still in this lockdown period, and seeing you all back on the squash court.
Thank you,
both,
Cyrus.
Hari and Joshna.
And thank you for everyone
Thank you,
who
Hari and
came.
Joshna.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, JC. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Sulbi.
It's still on. It's
Bye.
still on.
Hari, when next time when
Thanks,
I'm traveling,
Harry.
I'll remember all this.
Hey, Dalu.